Well, good morning everybody. It's now 8:30. Welcome to the 6th of May meeting of Te Puna Kōrero. I'll declare it open. We have a couple of apologies, one from Councillor Ngalo and the other one from Mayor Baker. Oh, and also Taku as well. Let's move on to public forum. Do you have another? Oh, no, sorry. Yes, I'll move that those apologies be accepted and seconded by Josh. All those in favour? Carried. Right, public forum. We have no requests for anyone to speak in the public forum this morning. Are there any conflict of interest declarations? There being none, we'll move on to the fact that there are no items of extraordinary business to declare either. So that brings us to a confirmation of minutes of the Te Puna Kōrero meeting of the 1st of April 2021. I'll move that they are a true and correct record. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ford. Are there any comments, corrections for anyone? Okay, no, there being none, I'll put the motion that they be received. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you, everyone. So that moves us to item 6.1, which is the Recovery Plan Monitoring Report. This is the second report that we've received. I'll move to get it on the table. Do I have a seconder, please? Yep, Councillor Waddle. Right. I'll ask Robin, I think, just to give us... Oh, Anne. Sorry, I got the wrong information. Sorry, Anne. I'll ask Anne to give us a bit of a very brief overview of what, if there's anything significantly different or things that we need to think about. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Essentially, this is the second report that gives us a summary of the social and economic impacts of COVID on our economy and on our communities. What's new between this report and the previous report is the summary table at the front, which helps to give a general overview of how the indicators stack together. And you'll be able to see from the way that it's laid out that we're actually tracking very well in terms of our indicators of economic recovery, but things are a bit more slower and complex when it comes to some of the social recovery indicators. It's a mixture of commentary from our local social services that work to support families in our community, alongside with data that we've gotten from official sources, just so we can build up a sort of more multi-layered picture. Certainly the community services, the very strong messages were around the increasing pressure on families around the affordability and availability of housing across the housing continuum. And this is sort of sustained level of need in terms of food security that hasn't returned to pre-COVID levels and may be a result of just the continued impact of financial stresses from housing and the continued impact of job losses or reductions in income over time.
Thanks, Anne. Does anybody have any comments or questions that they want to ask? Josh?
Kia ora, yeah, thanks. In terms of the areas in which we aren't doing so well, do we know if we're broadly in line with the trends we're seeing across the region and the country in those areas as well, or is there anywhere in particular that's sticking out that we're doing quite poorly on that we have to be specifically conscious of in Porirua?
There are some areas that we track more poorly than others. Certainly in terms of the housing issues, they are national issues, but in terms of Wellington region, the duration of time our families are spending in emergency accommodation is longer than some of the other areas. Also, the percentage of families in those, temporary housing, whether it's emergency or transitional, is quite high too. In the family violence space, we've got a long history of tracking much higher than our contemporaries and neighbouring communities. Yeah.
Josh? Mike?
Yeah, look, great report. One thing that interested me was page 17, our economy objective, the indicator for unemployment. Rate was 5%, but we flag it as green, close to achieving. Then on the following page, 18, our community objective, unemployment rate, we flag it as orange, something of a concern. I don't understand the two levels of concern there.
Oh, okay. In response to that, I thought that may be a question. The way it's indicated as green in the economic space is because when we wrote the COVID recovery plan, we had a target of returning to 5%. In terms of the social analysis, it actually still means an awful lot of people in hardship, so it's been indicated as orange.
Okay. Anyone else got any questions? Councillor Morrell? Yes.
Well, I just want to note also that while there might be 5%, the job seeker benefit's gone up 35% increase in Porirua. So there's more people looking for jobs. So technically it's just playing with figures. We've shifted from unemployment to job seekers. Same thing, really. I mean, they still haven't got a job. So, we should always be concerned about that.
Fair comment? You want to comment on that? No?
We had some unemployment figures come out by Stats New Zealand yesterday, and it's also showing that we've got increasing rates of underutilisation as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Just so, when will the next report of this be, this topic?
We agreed last year that we would report on a quarterly basis, but it's probably timely to have a discussion now whether you want to have such a comprehensive report on a quarterly basis or whether maybe touch base towards the end of the year, just to see how we're tracking. I would quite like to dig a little bit deeper into the economic indicator around employment and unemployment.
Do people want to make any comments on that in terms of?
Yes, I was going to make that comment that it is a comprehensive report. So there's a lot of time and effort that's gone into that, it's really reporting on statistics, and so I'm for having a longer period of time just for the amount of work that's got to go into it.
Fair enough. What do other people think? Yeah. I mean, I think it seems to be around the table that a longer period towards the end of the year would be fine. And I mean, I think there's a danger here of, this is a post-COVID thing, and the longer we go, the further away from COVID, touch wood, we get. And it becomes difficult to make comparisons pre and post because it's really hard to make those comparisons. So I just think we really need to be careful about those sorts of things. There are a lot of indicators that weren't looking good before COVID, so and some that were. So we need to be really careful about that, I think. Yeah. All right. So, sorry, Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everybody. I guess my question is, now that we are receiving reports and they are fulsome, I guess the next step is around specific actions. Can officers please give a commentary on what relationship or what work they have done engaging with MSD and any other relevant government agencies around emergency and social housing to get a sense of whatever work is in the pipeline from their perspective?
You want to answer that, Robin?
We've had, Councillor, a couple of conversations of late with Nanau and Adele Stone, who's the Commissioner, MSD, just regarding our temporary accommodation facilities within Porirua. She's recently employed a staff member that will be looking across the region at people housed in temporary accommodation and just looking at how MSD can support them to find housing outside those facilities, really. So there's quite a bit of work happening in that space, but we'll constantly keep in touch with her around that piece of work that's going on. So that's specifically in that space, and I guess in the other one of concern really is, the food security, family violence, they're sort of ongoing business as usual conversations that occur within this community.
Yes, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One sub for it. can subsequent conversations perhaps seek to get some understanding from, again, from MSD and other agencies as to whether or not they are looking to solutions around increasing capacity within the Porirua area?
Happy to, Councillor.
Do you want to raise something, Councillor Sayuli? Yep. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question regarding, in terms of report, because it's got down percentages, increases and so forth. Is it possible to have actual numbers?
It is possible to provide the numbers as well. It just becomes an even more fulsome report if I do that.
or even just a beginning number,
Yeah.
and then when you say the percentages, then we have a bit of an idea, because there's, unless I've missed it, but there's actually no actual numbers as such to go from.
The summary table tends to work on the percentages because it's giving you, it's highlighting the trends, whereas in the report itself, I do have actual figures like the number of kids who are not in employment, education or training.
Okay. I mean, I guess the comment that I would make, and thank you, Councillor Hayward, for raising it, is that, you know, we're here as a catalyst, not to do some of these things, but the points that Councillor Hayward makes around what's actually happening, because we're there to talk to people and give them a little push here and there, and if we can report back next time on what is happening as well, not just the report that we've got here that Jeff asked for, but at the end of the year as well, without making it too fulsome. I mean, you know, look, we're not a social agency, but, you know, we are here to act as a bit of a push, a bit of a catalyst to see that things are happening. So that's our responsibility. Thank you, and thank you for that report. Any other comments or questions? No. That being the case, I'll move that the report be accepted. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. So that now moves us to the finance report as at the 31st of March 2021. Can I ask Joe Devine, please, to just give us a bit of a brief summary of what this is telling us? Oh, sorry, I'll move to get the report on the table first, and you're going to second it, Jeff. Thank you very much. Now Joe will give us a summary.
So this is the end of the third quarter for this financial year. Overall, we're trending in a good position in relation to the operating space, but we do have some delays in the capital program, and this report will look at the proposed carry forwards. But just for more information, we're actually doing, at the 30 April results, we're doing a detailed review of the capital programs, and the carry forwards for that will be fed into the deliberations paper. So just where it sits in the process. If we're at the position of 31 March, on a year-to-date basis, we're 16% better than budget. That's predominantly due to subsidies and grants, and additional. I'll step through the detail in it in a minute. And when we look at year-to-date, the full-year forecast again, we're forecasting to be 3.3 better than budget, and that is predominantly in the grants and subsidies space, where we're receiving additional grants and subsidies that were not included within the budget at the commencement of the year. In the capital subsidy space, we are our full year forecast is 3 million against a full year budget of 1.4, but that's excluding the NZTA subsidies, which I'll cover separately. And the predominant one for that is that we're forecasting additional stormwater wetlands funding from MFE of 925,000, and we've got the impact of the 3 water subsidies coming through. Our professional fees budget is actually above budget, and it'll be ahead of budget, and it's forecast to be ahead at the end of the year, but that is predominantly offset by revenue. So, for example, the Plymouth Farms with the legal costs in relation to Plymouth Farms.
Plymouth Farms, yeah.
Plymouth Farms.
Yeah.
That would come through. In relation, we've also got a gain on sale. Our asset sales are ahead, and that's predominantly reflecting the recent sale of 26 Grays Road. So again, that's coming through to show that additional revenue that was not included in the budget. Transport are behind budget, and that is predominantly due to a combination of the delay in the link roads, and that the link roads were forecast to be completed at 31 March, but now they are anticipated to be completed at the end of September, so the funding is tied up in relation to those line items. The other is the low-cost, low-risk projects that are funded through NZTA. They are funded to be completed by 30 June. If there is a carryover into the new year, it is uncertain whether we would actually get the grants for that funding. The Spicer landfill has got a favourable variance, but there are some additional costs that are coming through that we still need to work through, and one of those especially will be the carbon units as we look at what the ETS costs will be coming in. The Three Waters, we're working with Wellington Water on resetting the stimulus funding for the Three Waters. The original funding for the Three Waters had it split between capital and OPEX. We've been working with Wellington Water and the stimulus funding. We're looking as moving funding out of the capital space, out of the renewal space and into the operating space to deal with the increased leakages that we are having, so we can that are occurring. We are still tracking slightly better, even though our forecast position is over 3 million better for year end on a balanced budget. We're tracking to be 1.7 million better than budget. The reason for that is we do not count capital subsidies in our balanced budget. We are asking for some addition to agree. The recommendation is for agree to recommend to council to increase the capital budget by 600,000. That's for the Porirua Bay shared pathway that we'll receive funding for. So it's that offset to make certain that we actually recognise the revenue and the increased expenditure. CapEx at the moment, and we're doing more detail as we go through the 30 April result, is predicting an underspend of around 12.3 million and applying for carry forward on that. We are doing a lot more work in the 30 April result and bring back to the deliberations paper in early June what the carry forwards will be, what we're proposing. But they are in the Three Waters. It is in transport. Again, that's in relation to the link roads and the moving that money forward. We've also in the property space where we're actually doing a deep review of property budgets have been historically set the full budget on the date of commencement of the project. So, for example, if a project was said to commence in April, we'd recognise that whole amount. What we are doing is we're looking at the cash flowing of that, so you'll see that coming through. So in the property space, we have not stopped anything, but we are actually looking at the timing of it. And you'll also see that in property is the cost for View Road, so the carry forward, because as we're looking for a potential buyer of View Road, we're not spending the capital that we'd forecasted. There's a little bit of discussion about the stormwater, and we've recognised those costs to date, and they are included in the current forecast, so we're doing some of that. As previously, there is a risk for transport on the low-cost, low-risk projects that we've received NZTA funding for it, and whether that funding would be available in the new financial year, or whether we'd have to fund it ourselves. And then for you all to note is the services for our city KPIs and the project reports that are attached.
Thanks, Joe. So I'll now open it up for questions. And Josh, you've got a first one.
Cool. Thanks very much, Ross. Yeah, just in relation to Three Waters, so I'm just looking at the bottom of page 55 or 56 on Diligent. I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more around how, so we've assumed responsibility for another 1.9 million of capital renewals as a result of stimulus funding moving towards OPEX from CapEx. but also top of the next page says that we're not likely to overspend existing budgets. And I'm just wondering if you could speak a bit more to that about how those two things are reconciled. Does that mean that we're currently not reaching the targets that we wanted to in terms of our spend and we're actually under-delivering? Is that how that's worked, or have I misinterpreted it?
It also continues on with a statement about where Wellington Water, at the moment, so Wellington Water currently bringing, so there's a timing in Wellington Water. So, for example, Duck Creek is behind, but we've got a bench of funding that we're bringing forward. So it's that matching off. So we're matching it off whether we can actually bring something forward. We're also applying for carry forwards in the 3 water space. But that 1.9 million was in addition to what we actually already had in the annual plan. So that was above what we'd actually been forecasted to do. So there's a combination of a number of things in that space. So it's a combination of additional funding coming in, a delay in some of the capital programs, the carry forwards into the new financial year, and the increased demand on operating because of the increased leaks. And it's that prioritising the increased leaks over the other pieces of work.
So that additional 1.9 then that we're assuming responsibility for, where is that money coming from?
That was the stimulus funding when you had the option to opt in to tranche 1. That came through the stimulus funding where we agreed to opt in, which was available after the annual plan and the budgets were set.
So it doesn't have any impact on rates?
It has no impact on rates.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Morrell.
Just with regard to Eastern Porirua, I know May has arrived, and we are expecting an announcement from the government. I presume that's in the budget, but I see there's a comment there that the government has committed an additional $3.8 billion. So, I'm nervous over this whole thing. So, is that an indication that we are going to get the money that they promised us? That's question 1. And question 2, have we had any indication? And question 2 is, where are we at with View Road?
Two different things. So let's answer the first one first.
Well, that's...
Yep. No. Thank you. Good questions.
As we said at the moment, we are aware of what the government announcement was about the infrastructure funding. We do not at this time know what it means for Eastern Porirua. We'd expect to get more information as the government budget process goes through.
Thank you. And View Road?
Yes.
Through the Chair, I'm writing a report for you now on the purchase and sale of View Road, or sale and purchase of View Road, which you'll consider on 20th of May at your council meeting.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Oh, Councillor Hayward, sorry, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I have a few questions, so if you grant me some latitude, I'll try and stay inside the standing orders. Page 54, 6F, thank you for furnishing the information regarding the low-cost, low-risk projects that are referenced in that point. Can officers provide some surety for us as councillors, trying to be prudent here, about what is in their minds the worst case scenario in terms of the quanta of money that council would have to meet to fulfil those carryovers if Waka Kotahi do not follow through with funding beyond this current financial year?
And would that be extra borrowing? Would that mean extra borrowing?
I'm looking at Graham, but I'm just going to, through the Chair, I'm just going to say in my mind it's a couple of million, something like that. Yeah, might be even less. But at the moment, while I note the report's written in a certain way, your transport department, many of our current staff have actually worked in NZTA, and they're working their magic as smartly as they can to actually make sure that we get the funding. So when you asked your question, Councillor, I gave you some sort of notes about they're quite strategic in terms of and working together, and there's a sort of conversation that goes around on that while the NZTA hasn't got money, there are actually other councils in New Zealand that come to the end of the year and haven't been able to spend. and this email goes out and says, does anyone have? And so there's a bit of that going on. So I'm not ringing alarm bells at this stage. Just bear with us. We'll do the very best we can there.
Okay, thank you. Next question is page 55, 14, and it's in regards to the CapEx carryover. I'm just trying to understand that. It's the, if I remember correct, I've lost my page here, 14F. Is there did I miss something about there being a delay in the delays in the construction?
Through the chair, can you just be a wee bit more specific about which point you're looking at? 14, is it?
I might move off 14 that just because even my notes aren't clear about that, so I might come back to you individually about that offline.
Thank you.
Can I go to page 70 then? And can we look at elaborate on how council expects Wellington Water to forecast increased work on blockages, because there's a number in there, and I want to know how that number came up in terms of the increased costs. That was not a number pulled out of thin air, was it?
Any idea? David showed
Where is it on page 70, Jeff?
You just go back and check that.
That's a whole table there. It's hard to,
Sorry, try 60,
or 71, is it?
71, sorry, apologies. Just wait for the laptop to load up. There we go. So at the end of the document, it says forecasting increased spend on blockages 403,000. I'm just trying to figure out where does that number come from?
Again, through the chair, just off the top of my head, they would have had a budget for the 12-month period on blockages. So as the year's progressing, 9 months, they've had more blockages going on than they've expected. So we've had some quite noticeable ones which have hit the press and media where something's happened and they've had to get in and do that work. So I think what they're saying is that's where we're going with our spend. David?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Just to add to that too, with the roving crew doing inspections on both private and public, and they've only just actually kicked off earlier this week, it's quite likely that they're going to actually be identifying some issues out in the network, and I would think, and I apologise, not where that statement's come from, but there will be some additional work coming up that they hadn't been expecting.
So just to clarify here, we don't know precisely where this 403, how they've calculated it, except that they forecast that amount. Is there any possibility that we could get them to actually, elaborate on that, so we get some understanding?
Through the chair, yes, we can do that.
Okay. Can I go to just page 78? I went back and checked the previous financial report. There seems to be a divergence here in terms of the targets and the results, reading 0 for pipeline blockages in the table. In the previous report, it actually used a decimal point, so it would read 0.2 or 0.3 in the previous report. Is there a reason why there's an inconsistency in terms of the reporting goal or our expectation, and why we would not have that consistent across our quarterly reports?
So, through the chair, we'll review that and look at what the issues are going forward. We haven't got an answer here and now.
Page 85, and this is in regards to the Kinapuru Drive project exception. Can I just get an assurance on the issue of overflows mentioned in the report, that we can categorically rule out any additional groundwater effects along that Porirua stream side of Kinapuru Drive as a consequence of this?
I don't know how you could do that.
I don't know how you could do that.
How would you do that?
I'm asking.
Why are you asking the question?
Because I just want to be absolutely certain that that any water that's coming over from an overflow event is solely affecting just that property and no other properties along that side of Kinapuru Drive.
Yeah, I think we should take it. I mean, let's take it elsewhere and just see when we talk with.
I'm happy for someone to come back and furnish me with a more fulsome answer.
Let's not do it here. I think that's a detail
Okay.
that we don't need to cover here.
Then 87. Can I get a report from councillors on what progress has been made on the work plan for the establishment of the Trades Training Hub that council approved, I think it was $50,000 for, in regards to the Porirua East Regeneration Project? We pay the money. We're hoping they're doing the work, right?
So what page?
That will be paid.
Yeah, we agreed it. So, I guess they're not here. Robin's not here, but we should be able to receive a report on how that's going and what's happening. Fair enough. Yep.
Page 88, can I just check on the status of the application to the Lotteries Communities Facilities Fund, which is referenced in the December 2020 financial report? And also, can I get a confirmation that when the RLTP is likely to be finalised by Waka Kotahi? And I know this is a long question, can I just be also clear about, in both this report and the previous report, there is a statement that says the project team will seek Waka Kotahi and external funding over the next 12 to 18 months. It's exactly the same statement in the last two reports, or this report and the previous report. Does that mean that we've had a delay since the last report, or does it mean that actually there's an incorrect wording here of the time frame?
It means that regional land transport projects, right, have not been finalised by the Regional Transport Committee yet.
That. Yep.
And those are that's not funding, that is how they are ranked by all the local councils.
Yep.
Then it will go to Waka Kotahi, and they will...
I understand the process, Mr. Chair. I'm more concerned about wanting to know, from my point of view, when that announcement is likely to be made, and that's one of the legs. The other leg is just about there's wording in this report which seems to suggest that there's been a delay in this project, which would not sit well with people within my ward.
Through the chair, the only delay is when we previously discussed the project in detail, we were going to apply for grant funding. When we've had a conversation about that round of grant funding, we were told a lot of people had applied, and actually they were more advanced than us because they had a consent. So we've taken that advice on board, and we're going hell for leather to get our consent and then put in our application for funding, and making sure that Waka Kotahi is on board with us in terms of any increased funding we might want from them, which seems to be the case actually. So it's just a slight delay in terms of working with government, if you like, to ensure that we've got the best crack at getting the money out of them.
Okay.
And at the moment, we had a project meeting about this earlier in the week, or late last week. We seem to be still on budget, within budget, to put in our consent application and get it in front of the regional council, and putting our best foot forward. And we've got our fingers crossed that we can get a non-notified consent. We're making it quite obvious in this paper that if it is a notified consent, the cost goes up quite a bit, and we'll have to redo our budget. But at the moment, it's coming along reasonably well behind the scenes.
Okay. The last one is, and it's just more of a follow-up from the previous financial report, is by way of background. This goes back to December 2020. We received a report around noise complaint responsiveness and our contractor, and that the report by officers was that we were going to have to go back to the contractor to look at having an additional car here based in Porirua so as they could meet our expectations about level of service. And that there was a comment in there that we would have to sorry, let me just make it the quote here correctly here, that we would expected to wear any extra cost of having an extra car based here in terms of the offset of cost. I'm trying to understand, as I did in the last meeting, asking for information about why would we be paying more for something when a contractor is not doing the job and the level of service that we expect for our ratepayers and residents.
Nick, you'll...
Yes, through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hayward. So we have started revision of that contract, and we are assessing what they've put forward at the moment. I might ask Manager Monitoring Compliance to just give you a bit more detail about that in terms of what we can disclose in this forum with regards to contract information.
Is that relating to any previous contract? I'm just saying, or the current status quo is what I'm trying to get us in.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yes, we are looking at a range of options that envelops both noise control and animal control attendance after hours. The current contract, well, it hasn't been performing up to the standards that we'd like for our KPIs. So we have had discussions with the management of our after hours contractor, and I'm pleased to say that they've made some improvements, and the last 2 months have met at 100%. So they're tracking nicely at the moment. They didn't, in fact, put a separate car in over the summer period. So we're trialling to see if we can continue these performance levels, and if it's not successful in the long term, we are looking at a different way of managing that contract involving the animal control as well.
Okay, that's my question.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, mine relate to KPIs, really. 78, 79 page, roading. This KPI, it says, always lags behind in terms of timing and completion. Is there not a better way we can actually arrange that KPI?
Through the chair, when I looked at that and read that long explanation, I thought to myself, we're going into an LTP and we've had a conversation with you about reducing the number of measures and getting our performance measures right, and I would hope that that's one of them that we are addressing, so that we get past that problem.
The next one was to do with water, Wellington Water, really. I mean, throughout this, it looks like Wellington Water aren't answering questions, and every one of the comments for the water services had the same comment in it. Could you not just put ditto in each of those things?
Noted.
The next one was the Wanera to Onipoto pathway one. That concerned me. It said there's a risk the estimate is too low. Is there not also a risk that it's too high?
I think through the chair again, in my response to Councillor Hayward, at the moment, I'm reasonably comfortable with what I'm hearing, that the project manager is working with the consultants on budget. We're working very carefully. There's risk both ways. We'll wait until we've discussed before. We need money out of government. We need money out of NZTA to make this project work. But at the moment, we're on track.
But it's still engineers' estimates rather than a quantity survey.
Until you actually get out there and test the market and do stuff. So we've discussed with you previously, we could spend some money and bring somebody in and do some more QA on it, but we just don't think that's worth the money at the moment. There's another conversation about when you come to tendering. Normally we would like to go to the market and tender amongst a number of players to try and get the best price. This conversation in there is, why don't we pick someone directly, somebody who's been a provider previously who might be able to do, share with us how those savings might happen. So there's a number of methodologies we can sort of employ, when we actually come to do the work that we'll discuss at the time.
Great. My final one, page 93, 94, the district plan. It's an extra $1 million on there we're going to be asking for. Can we have some explanation around that, perhaps?
Absolutely. I'm sure Nick would be pleased to.
Through you, Chair, that's an acknowledgement of the cost of the commissioners in the hearings process. So we underestimated the value of that some 3-4 years ago. Of course, we've now got a better feel for what's going to be involved in that process and exercise. We understand the costs of commissioners and lawyers now much more clearly. So we think that is a better reflection and a more accurate reflection of what that cost is likely to be.
Yeah, question. Ewan, you have a...
Yeah, while we're talking about major projects, I just wanted an update on where we are with the revocation process for State Highway 58 and State Highway 1. I get extremely nervous as I queue up like everybody else does in the morning to get here, and also see the amount of work that's been done on State Highway 58 of late, and every time it rains, all the amount of dirt that comes down on it. I'm extremely nervous that we should be considering taking that over. So I just wondered if it was an update of where we are with the whole process.
You know our stance is that we don't want it.
Through the chair, I've got nothing more to tell you other than I know we've assigned a couple of roading officers who can start talking to NZTA when they come calling, but the actual NZTA coming calling to get the process rolling a bit further hasn't happened at an officer level yet, and I'm reasonably comfortable with that. Like you, we've got important other things to do, and that will suck some resource out. So until that actually happens, nothing to tell you.
You have another question, Ewan? Anybody else got any more questions? I've just got a couple of questions, sorry. Can you just explain again what we are agreeing to in the recommendation? Increase the transport capital budget and NZTA subsidy by 600k. Are we putting any money into that, or is it, as under 8, it's 100% subsidised by NZTA? So there's no council money going into this, so we're increasing the capital, the transport capital budget by the 100% NZTA Waka Kotahi subsidy. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Great. I'm pleased. So I think I've asked this question before. I know I've heard it out around and mentioned here. The money we got for 26 Greys Road, that can only be spent in the reserves budget. Is that correct? Where it's not available to be spent on any project like water or anything else that we fancy?
I will do a double check and come back to you on that one.
Right, because I understood that it came from the sale of a reserve and it should only go into spending on reserves. I just would like that clarified.
We'll come back. And
Yeah,
clarify
that's
that.
great. I always make this comment. Now we're a little bit further on. How realistic is it that we're going to spend $7.2 million a month on CapEx before the end of the year, and we're already another month or two on?
We do think that's optimistic, and we will cover that off in the carry forwards for the deliberations.
Right. On 14, somebody's asked a question about Wellington Water. I just make the observation under 14, page 56 or 57 of our agenda, in terms of, and I understand how we underspend on some projects and we'll spend more on others, I just wonder why the UV treatment plant, which is important, and Plimmerton pipeline renewal, what the specifics around delays? Is that ordering materials or what is it? It just seems a shame that they are delayed because they're incredibly important projects.
Through the Chair, David, can you remember the specifics of both? As officers, we have meetings with Wellington Water about their major projects. So in both cases, we do have recorded comments about why projects are delayed.
Through you, Mr. Chair, with regard to the UV treatment plant, the actual execution of the work was set back a couple of months. It is underway now. And there has been one trip in regards to the power supply, which needs some upgrading now as well. But it is scheduled as per the financial year. Can't recall what the other project was.
The other one was the Plimmerton wastewater pipeline.
No, I'm not sure if that one. Sorry, we'll have to come back to you.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay. Can I also ask regarding? I guess I had a comment around the Kenapuru corridor. It surprised me that there was a comment there that underground services were too shallow, and how much of an impact does that have on the project?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it shouldn't surprise you. We come across this problem all the time, and it's common amongst all councils that things, when we dig up things, then things aren't where we thought they were. And it can have a significant delay in the project because, as a council, we don't particularly want to pick up the cost of moving the services. We have to bring another.
Yeah, no, that was my point. Are we going to get whoever's services are too shallow?
That's exactly
to fix it?
That is exactly the way we approach these things.
Fine, thank you very much. And the last one I have is Waitangarua Link Road intersection. I notice that that's going to be set to finish when Transmission Gully opens. I note that they're doing work now, but that the majority of that work will probably have to take place over winter, which is not a good time to do roads. How much is the risk? I see that you're not putting the risk as that great. How much is there a risk that won't be completed?
through the chair, ongoing conversation with the provider. So we like to seal in the summer season, which for us is the end of March. There's still sealing happening now in May, and you have a conversation with your provider about what is the methodology, what are you doing to guarantee us that that sealing doesn't crack up. Now, we are in 2021, so technology has moved on, so there can be a sort of a conversation about we do have better treatments and etc., but you also have a defects period, etc. So that's the sort of conversation we go through.
You've got it handled. That's. I just wanted to make sure.
I can see Nick wanting to say something.
Through you, Chair, I just happened to be in a meeting with Waka Kotahi this week with Wendy, where they briefed us on this very matter. They have said to the builder, and there's an expectation that all the paving will finish in very early July, late June. So they're working as hard as they can to get all the surfacing done before the heart of winter. I think it's something like 10 or 11 degrees is the level. So they've really increased their monitoring and expectations of the builder. And we've got a strong sense that Waka Kotahi want them to achieve that more than anyone. So I think if they can achieve it, they will with the weather window they've got at the moment.
Probably not more than us, but yeah, fair enough.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, no, good. Thank you for that. That's good. Ewan, you have a...
Yes, one further question which is related to projects. 7 years ago, we made a decision around this council table to remove demolish the Titahi Bay Hall, and 7 years later it's still standing. I see that we went through a very expensive resource consent by objecting. I just find this bureaucracy just gone mad, that our own council, officers decided to object to it through the regional the RMA, and now I see an advert. No, I'm getting there. Now I see an advert in the paper consulting with the community about replacing it with some sort of park. The question is, where was the money coming from to replace to do what we have to do?
I think, Ewan, we have already been through this, and it's clear. The Mayor
Shall I answer you? Sorry. We had 150k set aside from the resource consent and the commission side of it, so that we had to do that as part of the commissioner's hearings. So we don't have a choice. So we're going out for consultation, if you read my press release yesterday. So that's where it's come from. It was legally done. We didn't have a choice. The money has been set aside.
We didn't do it for fun, Ewan.
No. It's been set aside originally, okay?
Understand that, but where's the money coming from to build whatever we have to build to replace it? Oh, it's 150. Okay. So can I just get an indication when we might see the bulldozer going in?
Well, we're going to do the consultation. We just advertised it 2 weeks' time. So after that, so I would imagine, let's say 4 months to be safe.
Right.
I hope I'm still alive.
Oh, I hope so too, Ewan. So, are there any other pertinent questions around the finance report? If not, I'm going to put the report. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. There being no further business, we'll close the meeting at 9:18. Thank you, everyone.